The Thabo Bester saga continues to grip the nation's attention with allegations of stolen bodies, jailbreaks and corrupt prison officials. Many are still scratching their heads about how Katlego Bereng's charred body was found in the convicted murderer and rapist cell last May. Bester faked his death in a fire last May in order to escape from the Magudumana Correctional Center. For more on this, let's speak to Chad Thomas, who is with the IRS Forensic Investigations. A very good evening to you, Chad. So the latest from what News 24 has published today is that there's now fingerprint evidence linking Bester's lover, who was also on the run with him in Tanzania, Dr. Magudumana. How key is this bit of evidence in any investigation?
It's a definitive moment in the investigation because you now have evidence that indisputably links Nandipha to the body that was used in the prison escape swap. We're hearing mumblings and rumors that there are now deals being made in the background. We're going to hear more about those deals next week. But it would make sense that there are people that are scrambling to make deals. We know that the CCTV practitioner, for want of a better word, the person who was responsible for monitoring the CCTV, who had handed himself over, is cooperating with the authorities. We know that other people are cooperating with the authorities. But when one looks at the insurmountable evidence that has come to light now, one can only say that this is what we've been wanting to see from the South African police services for a very, very long time. And the fact that we're hearing and they're now sharing with us such important information, which is, like I said, definitive in respect of placing her at the scene when the body was released, is exceptional police work and also exceptional reporting, of course, by the media.
Mm-hmm. And it also speaks, does it not, Chad, to how important record keeping through the years is going to be in this case, especially in drawing the link between Bester and Magudumana. I mean, we've seen reports from the likes of Ground Up and News 24 that she'd been to visit him while he was in custody, serving life for rape and murder from as far back as 2017.
So the paper trail is in place. There's a digital trail in place. Unfortunately, with a lot of the CCTV, that wasn't in place because a lot of it isn't kept. It gets taped over in terms of the way those protocols work. But it's great to see that record keeping is being used as evidence and that record keeping is in place. It shows that there are departments that are still functioning. It shows that the evidence gathering that is being done by this particular investigative team from SAPS are looking at every single angle. And if you look at this body now, they've been able to track it all the way from when the person was picked up, severely injured, placed in an ambulance, taken to a hospital. I believe that he died en route at the hospital when the hospital was then transferred the body to the morgue. And of course now, this latest massive revelation, how the body was booked out and who was responsible for booking it out. But I think the biggest takeaway from this is the inference that's been made that Nandipha deliberately smudged her fingerprints. That would go to intent, as if to say, if there was some kind of check system in place, maybe they had tried something similar in the past in terms of an escape and they knew that there would be a paper trail. She was actually trying deliberately to mask her trail. And I think that is such an important point because so many people of late have been crying out that perhaps she's a victim of all of this. And we've maintained from day one that she was a willing participant. And this takes us that extra step to show the intent and the deliberate actions taken by herself to be part and parcel of this audacious saga.
And this is not the first time that she's said to have claimed a body, Nandipha Magudumana, because there was also a body that she said to have claimed in Bloemfontein, allegedly saying it was that of her father. That body, we read a few weeks ago, was in fact found in the nearby Bloemspruit Dam with the mortuary tag still attached to the toe. And if she had done this multiple times, I wonder if it would fit into the analysis, the school of thought that says that perhaps what she and Bester were doing through these bodies that were being claimed, as well as what we're hearing were trips in and out of prison where they'd spend time away together, was basically a dry run, a rehearsal for the big moment, the night of the escape.
Well, one of two things. Either it was a dry run and it was to see how they could do this. It was part of the planning. To go to that level of planning, that detailed planning, is unbelievable. And of course, the other alternative is that there were other failed escapes, that they thought maybe the time was just not right. Perhaps the body was wrong. It was too obvious. Maybe the body didn't have the characteristics. This particular body of Bereng, if one looks at his age, if one looks at his build, it's a lot more like Bester. He's a year younger than Bester, so if they'd done various tests, they would have found out that the age would have fitted, etc. But what's frightening about this is the fact that it appears that he was known to one of the warders, that he came from the same area, that he frequented the same taverns. And that is a very interesting development, because that now shows us that this wasn't perhaps just a body that was chosen ad hoc out of a mortuary that kind of fitted, but that it was actually planned that it would be his body that they could pick up. Because we don't believe in coincidence in the world of investigations. And considering he comes from the same suburb, frequented the same place as one of the warders, it now lends to a bigger conspiracy.
Right. And if what you're saying is true, and just to be clear, this is not what the investigators have said publicly. We don't know if it's a link they're investigating at this point, Richard. On what you're saying, if indeed there is an attempt to draw a link between Bereng's death and how his body ultimately was claimed allegedly by Magudumana from the mortuary and placed in the prison cell, it raises the question of whether he was killed by any of these people precisely for the purpose of using him as a decoy, or using his body, rather, as a decoy.
So yes, we've got specific charges in law pertaining to the way a corpse is treated, the way a corpse is booked out, the way a corpse should be disposed of, etc. So there's always those laws to fall back on. But right now we're hearing about murder charges. And the fact that we're hearing about murder charges suggests that the state believes that there was the intent to kill this specific person so that his body could be used because of the similarities. And now they're drawing all these lines where the dots are being joined in respect of where he was from, who he knew, and how he may have inadvertently been introduced into this elaborate scheme.
How long could Magudumana go to jail for these sort of crimes?
Life, which in South Africa, depending on the way in which the judge determines the sentencing, could be 25 years with an option of parole. It could be without option of parole. But the charges are stacking up against her. We've seen that some of the more serious charges have been dropped against her father. We've seen that there are potentially witnesses out there. A lot of people thought that perhaps she should be given the opportunity of being a witness, and that perhaps she was a victim in all of this. I don't think there's a deal on the table for her.
Do you think the state would even care to try and strike a deal with her, especially when they've got something as significant as her fingerprints linked at least to one body and its unlawful removal, if you will, from a government mortuary?
The only deal the state would do with her would be in respect of a plea and in respect of her then serving some form of custodial sentence. You can see the way she's conducted herself during the court proceedings, the way she tried to hide herself, the way she's been very quiet and meek, that she does not want to be the center of attention in all of this. Conversely, we've seen Bester, who looks for every single opportunity to look at a camera. So it's potentially a deal on the table for her where she could receive a custodial sentence and perhaps the option of parole after many years of served if she saves the court time and she does cooperate. But it's highly unlikely they would make her a 204 witness in respect of her turning against her co-accused in all of this.
Chad Thomas, good to speak to you from IRS Forensic Investigations. Always good to have your time.